So recently, we saw the sixth and likely penultimate season of My Hero Academia come to a close, with the finale episode of No Man is an Island, and I'll be honest, I loved this season. From start to finish, thought it was amazing. Filled with so much excellent plot development, great action and fight sequences, great intro themes, great voice acting, and a whole lot of wholesomeness. And I realise that I'm likely under the influence of some pretty heavy recency bias when I say this, but I think this is probably one of the best seasons of the show yet. It was a whole heap of fun, and it packed a whole lot into its 25 episodes. So much happened, and the story went at breakneck pace with minimal time wasted on long-winded rehashes of the events of the previous episodes. It was just a really good season, and honestly, I'm not ready for the show to come to a close. Based on the length of the manga left to adapt and the pace of the current story, I don't see how the show is going to be able to go past a 7th season. There just isn't enough content to cover all that, I think. And so yeah, it's clear the show's ending, but at least it's going to go out with a bang. Season 5 was a whole lot of fun, but I think that Season 6 has been superior. And so today, that's really what I want to talk about. How great Season 6 of My Hero Academia has been as a whole. And so yeah, nothing else to do but to get started, I suppose. Okay, there are a lot of elements of the season that I found to be really interesting and compelling. But I think in this type of show, the three most important categories are the overarching narrative and story flow, the depth of your character arcs, and of course, the action. Were the fights good? Were they engaging? And I think we can start with the action side of things. Every season, I feel like the action and the fight sequences have become bigger and bigger. Last season saw the joint training battles play out in quite vivid detail, and while some clashes were clearly better than others, they all had a lot of variety and excitement. And then we had the My Villain Academia story, which also had its fair share of action, although that final battle between Ridestro and Shigaraki, quite the anticlimax in the end if you ask me. And so yeah, Season 5, a lot of big action pieces, but of inconsistent quality. Season 6 though, my god, the action was so good. In particular, I really enjoyed the battle in the hospital basement, where it was just Mirko versus the pack of high-ends, and they were just chipping away at her. Really intense, really brutal and visceral. Loved it. And on top of that, I thought the battle of the students versus Gigantomachia went really hard. And I liked the visual variety of the battle of Deku and Lady Nagant, especially when Deku was swinging around like Spider-Man. Those shots in the rain were really cool and unique. And really just this whole season, every battle was great. No matter the character you were watching, no matter who they were fighting, you were able to get invested in the struggle, even if you only saw them for a couple of shots and then the episode cut away somewhere else. Each clash felt well constructed and was able to keep you engaged for the entire duration of the event. And they did that through three major avenues, really. One, I think just an animation, and is it right to call it choreography if it's animation? I think you still got to plan out how the fight's going to go and what the moves are going to look like in motion, so I guess you'd call it choreography. Either way, it all looked very good. It keeps you engaged visually. It's not one of those fights where they just spam punches and kicks at super speed and then talk angrily at each other for like a billion episodes and then start punching again. The action was fast-paced and frantic, unpredictable, like a true free-for-all with superpowered combatants. Really exciting visuals. But that's not all that made it great, like I said. The second element that I feel like went a long way to making these fights engaging was a strong narrative focus. Most of the big battles had a lot of emotion behind them, and the character motivations were heavily fleshed out. And a lot of these moments, they didn't necessarily involve big flashy moves, just so much emotion, like when Aizawa was fighting desperately to protect his students, or when Gran Torino tries to finish Shigaraki to avenge Shimura and gets pummeled instead, or when Tokoyami intervenes against Darby to save Hawks from getting cooked. The fighting, mixed with internal narration, and the cutaways to character pieces and flashbacks, on top of just the pre-established knowledge you have of the characters, all combines to make the fight more compelling and enhances the action playing out on screen. And then of course this third element is that the season really embodies the phrase, variety's the spice of life. There's so many characters, both major and minor, getting a whole lot of spotlight. It isn't just the Deku, Shoto, Bakugo, Endeavor show. It brings a whole wide range of heroes and students into the battle, and it makes them all feel important. Even the characters that kill Inomu and then just end up getting killed themselves. It feels like their death mattered. And it ends up making everything feel so much more gripping, because you never really know who might appear next or what's going to happen. But the action, that's just one side of things. Beyond that, I think the next major element that the season well and truly got right was just the story in general. The narrative, the way it flows between episodes and arcs. The first arc, the war arc. That was just, well, there really isn't another way to say it. It was epic in every respect, and it did so much right. Obviously, the action was excellent. But I thought it was really impressive how the story balanced itself between the hospital and the mountain villa fights over the course of the majority of the arc, until Gigantomachia escapes and heads towards Shigaraki's location. And I thought it was even more impressive how it balanced itself between so many different protagonists: Mirko, Hawks, Endeavor, Tsukiyomi, Kaminari, and all of that in the opening couple of episodes before Deku and the other mains from Class 1A really had a chance to do anything and be involved in the story much at all. Hell, Shigaraki doesn't even properly turn up until episode 5. And so I found that these opening stages of the first arc were handled really well and really shared the focus of the story, giving a lot of the second and third tier characters time to shine. And even when Deku finally makes his move, he isn't the be all and end all. There's Bakugo, Shoto, Darby, Endeavor, Aizawa, Gran Torino, Ryukyu, Best Jeanist, Mr. Compress, Spinner, Toga, Uraraka, Lemillion. They all get a chance to be involved in the fight, and in the story itself with their own little mini-arcs and character moments that infuse into the overarching narrative. And in that way, I feel like the story feels more varied and robust. And yet, despite there being so many different characters and moments and plot points, it still all revolves around that clash. Good and evil, Deku and Shigaraki, all for one and one for all. And it's that dynamic that manages to keep all of these stories anchored together. And even as the story takes its own little detours, like into the tragic friendship of Hawks and Twice, or exploring more of the Todoroki family dynamic, it ensures that it always ties back into the war, to the battle. And so, the war arc was basically just done really well. But indeed, so was the entire season. You have balls to the wall action for a good 12 or so episodes in the war arc, and then of course with the All for One during the Tartarus escape, and then you have this great cool down section, where a lot of characters reflect on what's happened throughout their lives, reflect on their actions and the consequences of their decisions, as well as some pretty fun Vestige Realm shenanigans, before they do a fun inversion of the hero goes it alone trope, giving a more realistic take on what happens when a hero goes on their own, with Deku slowly but surely wearing himself out by constantly doing hero work all alone, with little time to rest, or to lighten his mental load, or to even eat. And so by the time you see him finish off Lady Nagant, he's the walking wounded. He's dead on his feet. And so not long after that, he becomes so weak that he needs rescuing by his classmates. Classmates who then stand up for him to the public to ensure that he can remain safe in the walls of UA. The story's well-rounded and well-paced, and it flows well from action into lull or expositional periods before returning to action, and then cooling off again for the end of the season. And it really highlights a number of the more minor characters. Of note here was probably Ida, especially in that last arc, and then Uraraka as well. Characters that were once super important, but that fell by the wayside quite a lot. And then you couple the great action and the top tier storyline with some great music and really stellar voice acting, and well, it's just a recipe for a good time. And so yeah, my favourite season so far, I think. Maybe season 2 would edge it out, but that's at best. And so yeah, nothing really else to say. Love this season, my favourite, and I'm not ready for the show to end. But with all that being said, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the recent season of My Hero Academia? Did you like it as much as I did, or maybe you have some criticisms? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know.